Thank you very much, everybody. And Katie and Matthew, thank you for those presentations. And doesn't that just show what fantastic people we have standing as police and crime commissioners under the Conservative banner? Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important year for our country, and it's an important year for our party. Last year, thanks to the determination of the people in this room, the hard work of our members and supporters across the country, we won a general election. For the first time in 23 years, we won the right to govern as a majority and the right to provide a safe and secure future for Britain. As a result of that vote, this year, for the first time in over 40 years, Britain will decide over whether her future remains inside the European Union or lies outside it. We promised a referendum on Europe, we fought for it, and we've delivered it. And the referendum is a question to which the answer will define our country for years to come. But we mustn't allow it to define our party. Being a Conservative is more than about being Leave or Remain. It's about making sure Britain is the best possible country for our children to grow up in, for our elderly to grow old in, the best possible place for our families, friends and neighbours to live and thrive and prosper. And that's why today I'm going to talk about what's at stake on May the 5th. On that Thursday, in less than a month's time, millions of people across Great Britain will vote to decide how billions of pounds will be raised and spent by local government, how the police will be held to account, how the nationalists in Scotland and Labour in Wales will be kept in check, and how London can be made even greater. Now, there was a time when the year after a general election might have been seen by some in the party as an opportunity to take a well-deserved rest. It might have been local elections, but for some, the year after a general was a bit of a fallow year, recharge the batteries, spend spring doing something else other than stuffing envelopes and getting out the vote. Now, we all know that that was never really the case. Conservatives have always had to take the threat of Labour gains and Liberal Democrat advances. Remember those? We've always had to take those seriously. And with the unprecedented amounts of power that Conservatives in government have devolved from Whitehall to the Town Hall, there's no such thing as an irrelevant local election. Thanks to the work of George Osborne, Sir Eric Pickles and now Greg Clark, local government is more important than it has been for nearly a century. Local leaders are being delivered new powers and millions of pounds to turn on important investment in their communities. They're being allowed to retain every single penny they raise in business rates to the benefit of their area, rather than sending it to Westminster. And Conservative leaders, in particular, are keeping council tax down and improving service for taxpayers, whether it's Woking's work to regenerate its high streets or Welling's 7th consecutive council tax freeze. A vote for a Conservative is a vote for a local authority that respects the council taxpayer and works hard for them. And Conservative councils have innovated to turn back the tide on the years when Labour let council tax double and services stagnate. Hart, Havant, Mendip, South Oxfordshire, Vale of White Horse councils have saved £50 million by clubbing together to joint purchase their backroom functions. Daventry is delivering new healthcare facilities for residents through contributions from housing developers. And in my constituency, Wokingham Borough Council is transforming adult social care, while the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead has worked with parents and teachers to set up great new schools, giving parents choice where they want and need it most over their children's education. Greater powers being used well to deliver better services with better value for taxpayers' money. That's the Conservative way. But this year, the Labour way is potentially even more ruinous than it has been for over 30 years. We knew Ed Miliband and Ed Balls were bad, pound foolish without even being penny wise. But After their failure, none of us could imagine that the party of Hardie and Attlee would turn to Jeremy Corbyn. This is a man who would rather talk to Daesh than defeat it. A man who wouldn't condone the use of shoot to kill in a Paris-style attack on our nation. A man who would send our nuclear submarines into the high seas unarmed. If you need to know why it's more important than ever that Conservatives prosper, it's because the Labour Party elected as leader an MP who opposed designating Al-Qaeda as a terrorist group. And the fact is, this was not an aberration, or a freak or a fluke. Jeremy Corbyn won 62% of the vote in Labour's leadership contest. And his supporters are now trying to purge his most hostile opponents from local Labour parties up and down the country. The consequences of Labour's hardening radicalism are already beginning to be seen. Already they're planning to hike council tax and run councils like the expulsion of militant never happened. So we must work together to elect Conservatives to our town halls and keep Labour out of the corridors of power. And nowhere is this more vital than our capital city. An economic and cultural powerhouse that Europe, the US, beyond looks to for leadership. London employs over 5.5 million people. Its transport network handles 24 million journeys a day. The Metropolitan Police employ 32,000 police officers to keep its people and its businesses safe from crime. And of course London has its problems. Every city does. But I know that Zac Goldsmith is the one candidate who can build on the work that Boris Johnson has begun. Only Zac Goldsmith can fix and start to fix London's housing crisis. Only Zac Goldsmith can further improve London's transport network, and only Zac can improve Londoners' quality of life. And only Zac can make London's streets safer. To back anyone other than Zac is simply too much of a risk. It means trusting the leadership of this great city of ours to a 4-year experiment with Sadiq Khan, one of the few Labour MPs who nominated Jeremy Corbyn for the Labour leadership. Now, I could go through any number of reasons why this experiment would fail London, from his housing policies that would make the current situation worse, the 1.9 billion black hole in his transport budget. Each one is as valid as the other as to why Sadiq Khan should not be given the London mayoralty. But I will also say this. As Home Secretary, I've worked to make sure there is no space in our discourse for those who sow discord in our communities, driving people apart. It's not easy work, but over the last 6 years, we've made real progress. Under this government, over 150,000 pieces of extremist material have been taken down from the internet. I've excluded more hate preachers than any other Home Secretary in history. So I worry when I see Sadiq Khan in contortions over whether Baba Ahmed, a man subsequently convicted of conspiracy and providing material to support terrorism, was a friend of his or not. When I see that he shared a platform with a group backed by an extremist imam. When I see that he defended someone threatening fire throughout the world as simply using flowery language. This is not a judgment London needs in a mayor at a time when we face a significant threat from terrorism. And that's why on the 5th of May, Londoners have an important choice between a mayor with a plan and the ability to deliver, or one who would put London's success at risk. And we must make sure that London backs Zac. Of course, one of the mayor's greatest responsibilities is the oversight of the Metropolitan Police, holding it accountable to London's citizens. And it's sometimes easy to forget that before 2000, this function didn't exist at all. Apart from the Home Secretary, there was no democratically elected voice in policing. Over the last decade and a half, the Mayor's power to set the budget and be part of the crucial decision to appoint the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police has become embedded in our political culture. And as an example, this week I joined Zach for the launch of his action plan on crime. This prioritises neighbourhood policing and more police on public transport at night, all while tackling the root cause of crime in London's communities. As Mayor, as I say, he'll be crucial to making sure that London's streets are safer and will be held accountable for his success or failure in doing that. It's such an important set of powers that no government would be able to strip these powers from the elected Mayor of London, and no government would wish to do so. And it's precisely because these powers are so important, precisely because Conservatives recognised the important need for greater accountability in policing, that we created the Police and Crime Commissioners. Police and Crime Commissioners make sure that everyone across England and Wales, whether they live in Bristol or Battersea, Wrexham or Redcar, have a say over policing and a voice to represent them to police leadership. These roles ensure that the public shape policing with real powers and real significance. They're responsible for budgets that run into the hundreds of millions of pounds and responsible for appointing the Chief Constable in their area. And the fact is, Police and Crime Commissioners work, and in particular, Conservative Police and Crime Commissioners work. You heard earlier from Katie, and she has made it her priority to tackle domestic violence, to help the victims of this crime. And as you've heard, she's the first to fund a perpetrators scheme in the country and introduced a new framework for victim assessment, referral and non-specialist support services, a framework that's subsequently been used to help secure victim support services in other areas of the country. But let me name some of our other Conservative Police and Crime Commissioners. Chris Salmon in Dyfed-Powys. He's frozen the police precept while investing so that officers spend more time on the beat, over 100,000 hours extra, in fact. Matthew Ellis in Staffordshire has redistributed every penny recovered from the proceeds of crime back to local projects dedicated to making communities safer. Adam Simmons in Northamptonshire tapped into the well of support for the police and what they do amongst the public and has driven the recruitment of hundreds of special constables. And you heard from Matthew Scott what he would do if elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner in Kent, particularly on the area of the police working with people in mental health crisis. Conservative PCCs have achieved so much, and all of this while delivering on the Conservative principles of sound money. Spending only what you have as wisely as you can in the knowledge that it's not your money, it's the taxpayers. So Conservative PCCs have kept precept increases low, lower than Labour PCCs and lower than independent PCCs. And by cutting waste, they've been better at protecting neighbourhood policing than other police and crime commissioners as well. May the 5th will see the first time that police and crime commissioners come up for re-election. And even though these roles are in their infancy, it's clear that they are important. Important for the accountability and transparency they bring, important for the powers they have, and important for what they can achieve. Now, I know some people have questioned whether political parties should stand candidates in the PCC elections. But remember, these are elected positions. They're there to provide accountability to the public. And crucially, Police and Crime Commissioners do not provide operational direction to the police or interfere in day-to-day policing. They set the strategic plan and budget for their force, and as you heard from Katie, they hold the force to account. They're the voice of local people, and if people don't like what they do, they can vote them out at the next election. Now, unfortunately, not everyone in Great Britain can vote for Police and Crime Commissioners. If you live in Scotland, you'll be faced with a rather different choice. Elsewhere in the UK, a Conservative vote is simply about making sure government works as best it can. In Scotland, a vote for the Conservatives is a vote for the United Kingdom itself. May the 5th sees the first elections to the Scottish Parliament since Scotland voted to stay in the Union 18 months ago. While the No campaign won by nearly 400,000 votes, the referendum precipitated the disintegration of the Labour Party. At the general election, seats held by Labour for decades, with huge majorities, shrugged off their MPs and backed nationalist candidates for the first time ever. Seats once passed down from Labour MP to Labour MP, once held by the likes of Gordon Brown and John Smith, swept away by the surge. A party which saw itself as the permanent, immovable feature of Scottish politics is now irrelevant. No matter what Labour do, they cannot win back the ear of voters, whether it's by promising to increase income tax or suggesting that they could one day end up supporting independence. So there are only now two viable forces in Scottish politics: the separatist SNP, the party of Sturgeon and Salmond, and the Scottish Conservatives and Unionists, led by Ruth Davidson. So voters in Scotland have an important choice. They could back the nationalists, who promised the referendum would be a once-in-a-generation event, but who will launch a new campaign for independence this summer. The people who built an economic case for independence on fatally flawed assumptions. The people who would have left a £15 billion black hole in Scotland's budgets. Or they could back Ruth Davidson and the Scottish Conservatives for a real opposition. They could back a woman who will take on the overmighty SNP, a woman who will fight for Scotland in the Union, a woman and a team who will not deviate in the fight to keep the United Kingdom united. And a vote for Ruth and the Scottish Conservatives is more than a vote for the Union, it's a vote for jobs too. We all know that unemployment can scar lives, it can devastate whole towns and cities. That's why governments have to help create the conditions for growth so businesses can flourish and thrive, providing work for people so they can support their families. Since 2010, Scotland's businesses have created nearly 200,000 more jobs, success built on the economic foundation of the whole UK. So we must continue this work. And it's important that people in Scotland cast their vote on May the 5th for the Scottish Conservatives, the one party that will fight to keep Scotland as a great place to invest, the one party that will make sure Scotland's businesses won't be left behind. Now, of course, we can't talk about the importance of jobs without talking about Port Talbot and without talking about steel. And the production of steel and the skilled work it entails has been integral to the Welsh economy and to Wales itself for generations. And this is a deeply worrying time for all those employed in the industry and all the families supported by it. And while there are no easy answers, we must look at all the viable options to keep a strong steel industry at the heart of our manufacturing base, and we must ensure that any solution provides a long-term sustainable future for steel. And while the Westminster government is taking action on energy costs and unfair dumping, the Welsh government can do more too. As Andrew R.T. Davies has said, Cardiff Bay should use the business rate tools at its disposal, should explore how infrastructure projects such as the M4 Relief Road can stimulate demand for Welsh steel. And a vote for the Welsh Conservatives in May will help to make sure the Welsh government does all it can to support Welsh steel. So there's a lot at stake on the 5th of May. Across the United Kingdom, whether it's in the Town Hall or London City Hall, the Police HQ, Cardiff Bay or Holyrood, a vote for the Conservatives can't be optional at this election. The countless hours that people in this room put in to canvass voters, deliver leaflets, knock up our pledges, are crucial to making sure that people across the country get powerful and responsible local representatives. They're vital to making sure that taxpayers' money is spent wisely, where it needs to be spent at all. And they're fundamental to the happiness and prosperity of this country, from north to south, from east to west. So never let us be told that our party is only interested in its own battles. Never let us be told that we are limited to just one of our causes. Never let us be told that we can't stand shoulder to shoulder with our fellow Conservatives and fight for a better Britain. We are the Conservative Party, and we will deliver an even greater Britain. Thank you.